Hey everyone, and welcome to Taqueando. I'm your host, Bill Esparza. I want to thank you all for hanging in with me for these first 35 episodes of Taqueando. Yes, it's episode 35. What a year it's been. It's been a real challenge here in Los Angeles for restaurants, for the people of Los Angeles, for the Latino community, especially indigenous people, the people that have come here to work. Also, Latinos that are here legally, being able to live our lives. So we've had highs and lows and everything in between this year. But we have to take care of each other still. And we also have to take care of ourselves. And we cannot let a tyrant dictate how we feel every day, how we navigate the day. And we can't have it affect our choices. So here at Taqueando, we've been able to speak with some great friends and dine with them, explore rich, timely topics. On today's episode, we are going to take a look back at the conversations that shaped Taqueando in 2025. From interviews with Michelin star chefs who have defined fine dining over the past decades, to pioneers paving their own way in fields ranging from wine to Panamanian cuisine. We've also slipped in a couple of excerpts from episodes in which it was just me discussing some of the topics I'm most passionate about, the ones you love, for better or worse. Whether you're a new listener or a ride or die, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy it. Happy New Year. Feliz año. For our first interview, we're going back to the beginning. Episode number 1. We started Taqueando with a bang, speaking to the one and only Enrique Olvera at his Arts District restaurant, Damian. Here is Chef Enrique discussing the ascent of Mexican flavors into the fine dining realm and why he decided to go all in on antojitos. Vamos a taquear. I think the last meal I had at Puyol, when you were talking about this idea of a circle, and this was when the mole madre was coming into your menu. You hadn't started doing that yet, but you were working on that dish. Yeah. And you've gone through so much refinement over the years that I know that Puyol right now is always changing, but there's a certain style that's, I think, remains. So now when I go, I still see the restaurant, even though you've completely changed the menu. I still feel like it's arrived at a place that's still evolving. But a lot of people don't understand, like when you open the restaurant, there wasn't much to go on. There was Ferran. Yeah. And Spanish cuisine is very different. They were reinventing Spanish dishes, but Spanish dishes don't have they're not in our imagination so much as Mexican food. And his revolution was techniques to change the structure of food and the presentation and make these really beautiful presentations of simple Spanish dishes. But what you dealt with, and Rene Redzepi was not a household name in 2000, and I don't think...
No, Rene became really big in 2010, I remember, because it was the 10th anniversary of Puyol, and we had invited him to cook at the restaurant because I met him in a Star Chefs conference a couple of years before that, and we became good friends. And he was coming to cook to Puyol, and he was well known, obviously, within the circle, but like you said, he was not like a big global chef. And that year he won number 1 on 2010, and that's, I think, when like the Nordic movement started to become something bigger than the industry itself. No, it was not contained in restaurants anymore. But yeah, like you said, I think Ferran was like a movement of freedom. No, like I think what Ferran did is he said like, okay, you're free to do whatever you want to do. Because I think before Ferran, at least when I was a cook, I remember when I was in school, being a good cook meant you're fast, you're precise, and you don't mess around with the recipes. No,
follow the rules.
Yeah, this is what chefs wanted from cooks, and people also expected from chefs in restaurants. No, you wanted like who makes the best sol meunier, no, and you're not gonna mess up the recipe. You're gonna be extremely precise. You're gonna source your products correctly, no, and then you're gonna be like also like very neat, very elegant. I think what Ferran did was saying like, okay, like we don't have to do that anymore. And of course he chose his own path. but I think he opened even the path for people like Rene. And then Rene, I think what he did is he said like, okay, like local is the most important. No, it's like do whatever you want to do, but do it with what you have.
Find ingredients, rescue ingredients, and make it beautiful. But like you said, the manifesto didn't even wasn't there in 2000, even in 2002 when you were starting to make your changes. And so you're sort of isolated. And you also were stuck with something they didn't have, is that everybody has this strong opinion and strong experience with Mexican cuisine, the flavors of Mexico, spice and, you know, the chiles and the moles and the different sauces. And so how did you decide that it was going to be antojitos? Because that's what it was like. That was the revolution for me. It was like, you took antojitos, this huge vocabulary of regional, 32 regions, and all the dishes, the masa-based dishes, and you presented them in a fine dining setting.
Yeah.
And that was like, I mean, today, if you go to anywhere in Mexico, whether it's Oaxaca, Guadalajara, the chefs are doing antojitos.
Yes. Well, like I said, no, Rene said like do local, and you can interpret that as copy the Noma presentation book and do it with your cuisine, which I don't think is the right thing to do, or to do whatever is local to you. To us in Mexico City, what we have is street food. No, like I said, most like if I was in Puebla or I was in Veracruz or I was in Yucatan, maybe it would have been different. But for us in Mexico City, most of the cooking happens in the streets. No, it's so it was like, this is what we have. No, this is what we should work with, and that's why we chose the antojito path. No, if we don't have a strong traditional fine dining restaurant culture in Mexico City either. No, to this day, it's something that surprises me. If you want to go to like a Michelin star traditional Mexican restaurant, it really doesn't exist. Most of the Michelin star restaurants are contemporary. The traditional one that hasn't been done, I think, in the capital at least. No, like you said, if you go to Levadura in Oaxaca, or you go maybe, no, but in Mexico City it hasn't been done, and that's why we chose the antojito path. I also thought that it's super important that people want to go to your restaurant, no, and people love antojitos. No?
They love it, right?
So it was also a way of getting people back in, no, because if you do a fine dining restaurant, no, that is like the classical dishes of Mexico, how many times can you do that? But antojitos you can have every day. So it's something that I think also helps us make people want to come back in. I think that's also something that we're really concerned about, is that people want to come back. No, with Puyol, we don't want it to be the restaurant that you cross off a list and never come back to. We want you to want to come back. I know you're not going to come back every 2 months or 3 months. I mean, some people fortunately do, but if it's a restaurant that you visit every 6 months, every year, I think that's a really good sign that we're doing something that is really high level, but it's also approachable and people want to go back.
Yeah, and it meets that criteria. People are like, oh, I came here for Mexican food and I wanted Mexican flavors, and they're still getting that, where no one worries about whether I'm having great Danish food in at Noma.
Yeah, I think the thing with Mexico, like you said, is that we have such a profound and deep culture that there's a reference, and there's always I mean, for good and for bad, because we do have that reference, but also
that made you afraid to do tacos and things like that for a while, right? I mean,
yeah, and mole even, because you always have the reference of your mother. No, so I'm not going to compete with your mother. No, so everybody was like, "Oh, my mom makes better mole." It's like, yeah, I'm sure she does. No, like I would say that about my mom. No, so it has some benefits, but it also has, I think, a lot of comparisons, and also I think that one of the issues with doing antojitos is that people for a long time have said, like, and I know a lot of close friends that still ask me that question, and we discuss about it, is should antojitos be expensive or not? And it's something that I always talk to them. It's like if you have good corn, if you have if you have good animal protein, no, if you're sourcing properly. I'm not saying they should be $100 and the other one should be one, but definitely there should be a gap, no? If you're sourcing your ingredients well, if you're paying good wages and you have a beautiful setting, that also costs some money, no? So it's something that I think internally in Mexico we were discussing for a long time. Alicia Gironella passed away a few years ago, but I had this talk with her once because she told me, like, I don't know if alta cocina mexicana exists or not. And it was a discussion that we had because she was saying, like, I don't know if Mexican food is in that setting. What I told her is, like, if we think that making alta cocina mexicana means passing everything through a chinoise and presenting it in small portions in a European tasting menu format, yes, that shouldn't be the path. No, I think the path needs to be how do we see the sophistication in a tortilla? How do we see a sophistication in a salsa? How can we present that in a cohesive menu? And it's a path that we're trying to, I don't think we're there. No, I think we still have some work to do, but we've been trying to get to that point where we create a new language of how to do a gastronomical experience with Mexican cuisine that can be, like, it competes in terms of execution, and not because the execution in the towns is the most like the best salsas I've ever had in my life almost always have been at somebody's house in a rural context in Mexico, because they have the most amazing tomatoes,
right?
No, the most amazing herbs, no, and it's very simple. They barely touch it, and it's delicious. And I think if we go towards that, and not towards pureeing in a blender and then passing through a sieve and making a gelatin, which is what we did in 2002, you're in a better.
Here on Taqueando, we're not just about the chefs, but we are going to explore the breadth of Latino culture here in Los Angeles and abroad. We've also had other luminaries with us, like the one and only Pepe Aguilar. The legendary recording artist met me at Teddy's Red Tacos. This was after I got a chance to go back and see his hometown and dine with him in his own home. So the place he chose for us to meet was a favorite of his, Teddy's Red Tacos. And we met there for a wide-ranging conversation on music and, of course, food. Here he is discussing where he likes to eat when he's in LA.
But a lot of people don't really realize what a big foodie you are.
And they should see me eat right now.
And so, like, you know, you've spent a lot of time here in Los Angeles. You lived here at one point, and now you live in Houston. You have a lot of favorite spots here in Los Angeles. What are some of the... What I'm very impressed with is that you grew up in Mexico, but you actually enjoy Mexican food here in the United States as well. You know, some Mexicans can be snobby about having the food here because they have it back home, but you actually enjoy going to different Mexican restaurants here in Los Angeles?
Ever since, I mean, I've been coming to LA for more than 50 years now. I'm 57. Been coming here since I was 3, 4. So I've seen quite a movement in the culinary world. Like, I remember the places my father used to take me that he used to go when he was young. There's this place that still exists. It's called Musso and Frank's.
Okay. That was a favorite of your dad's.
Yeah, and it's still a favorite of mine. I mean, they still do a heck of a steak and a heck of a Spanish omelet.
The martini?
That's a good idea. Next time I go there, I'm going to order drinks. I never order drinks there. I always go just for the food.
Oh my gosh, you got to have the martini. And make sure it's with gin, because the bartender will stare you down if you ask for vodka.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, so when you order a martini there, they'll say gin or vodka, and I said gin. He goes, because if you order vodka, that's not a real martini. They're old school guys.
Okay.
And so gin martini, I like it extra dry there, and it comes with a sidecar, so it's deceptively strong. I feel like it's just one drink, but it's one of the ones that kind of leaves me a little wobbly, and I have a good tolerance. But that, I don't know why that martini gets me every time.
I gotta go to drink dark martini that you're talking about, man. I'm curious now. So, yeah, that was one of the restaurants. There was another one called Chasen's.
Oh, of course. You went to Chasen's. You were a regular.
I was not a regular, but I went to Chasen's. And that was a restaurant that was open in the golden era of cinema.
Right.
People after the Oscars went to Chasen's. I also went to like I'm a foodie at many different levels.
Right.
Like I like tacos. Like this is like the best thing you can give me.
Yeah.
But I also like high cuisine in different styles. Like Japanese cuisine here is freaking amazing in LA.
It's one of the better places in the U.S. to get Japanese food.
Totally.
Sure.
But then after you go to Tokyo, you go and say,
right.
No, I don't want to go back. Yeah, when you go to Tokyo, it's like, no, this is out of this world.
Yeah, your $60 sushi in Tokyo is $350 here too. That's
yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you do get like very decent Japanese here in LA. You do. But it's like if you go to un coleadero or a rodeo in the mountain, and people in that little town invite you to go eat with them.
Right.
After you've done your thing with the horses and stuff, and they have this molcajete of salsa, of tomatillo, like burned in the charcoal, with chiles and sal de grano, and handmade tortillas and beans, and it tastes like heaven. It's you cannot get that at a 3 Michelin star restaurant. No matter if they try, and believe me, they've tried. I also like that type of food. We my wife and I are foodies like to the max. We travel the world just to eat. Like we go out, like we go down to this country, let's just go eat. And we do our itinerary based on the restaurants. So yeah.
Your wife throws a good party, by the way.
Yes, she does.
We had an amazing dinner.
She's a party girl.
At your place, we had asado de boda, birria, wonderful antojitos, and that was a wonderful party.
Let me tell you about another place here in LA, because I didn't tell you about.
I'm waiting for the Mexican food trucks here.
There was a place near Pico Rivera. I think estaba en La Roche, no? La Roche. On Rush Street. That it had a C, okay?
The C is for chingon.
Yeah, it was near a supermarket. You have no idea what kind of burritos they made there and what kind of tacos they made in that C place.
Well, tell me about it.
I took Joanne once from Beverly Hills all the way to Rush Street there. We made we did like an hour and something after, I think it was some Grammy thing, and the place was closed, and we ended up eating at a dentist. But the place was so good that I took Joanne around 2 a.m. because they were open like till late, but not that day. And what do they do? Like big flour tortillas, amazing tasting frijoles, and chile verde or chile rojo, the best freaking chile verde you ever tried. And the tacos were just asada tacos, but with a salsa that was amazing. And then they gave you 2 or 3 serrano chiles, like out of the supermarket, just like that. Oh my God. I don't know why they closed that place. That was a crime that they closed that place.
Do you remember the name of it?
I will remember the name of it because I will. And
Okay.
And I will text it to you because
Okay.
there will be a lot of people that will agree with me that it was amazing. And the tripa burritos, oh my God. Like, you like tripa?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, of course. Who doesn't? But my kids don't like tripa. You like tripa? Yes? You used to?
Todas las vísceras. Todas las vísceras.
Yeah. My kids don't eat tripa though. They're fresas from Mexico. No, I
Do they eat menudo?
no, but I do.
Okay, yeah, I do too.
Where can we get like a good menudo here in LA? Tell me.
I like the menudo at Tamales Elena.
Okay.
So theirs is really good. There's an old school place in East LA that's very good. Tortilleria Imperial.
Okay.
And I think they're in East LA.
All right.
East LA Pueblo Heights area. So they're the two places I really like for menudo. It's really hard to get a good birria because, you know, it's we don't have all the cuts. Like if you, back in Zacatecas or, you know, in Mexico, you get all the different parts of the cow.
Uh-huh.
And here they just have like honeycomb, book tripe, and pata, you know. And so you don't get a lot of
Why
flavor.
is that? They don't sell the other part?
They don't sell the other parts.
Really?
Yeah, like you can get in Mexico.
There must be something really wrong about those parts for people not letting them eat it.
Yeah, I mean,
we don't care in Mexico.
No, we don't
give a
care.
shit.
There's a legal thing of them not selling those parts.
Oh my God!
And so
Now
that
I'm
makes the
going to
stock-
be curious. I gotta ask my AIs now. Why
Yeah,
am I not
ChatGPT.
able? Yeah. Why am I not able to eat this thing? What am I been doing wrong in my life? Because I don't care.
No, but it's hard. I mean, for me, I get great menudo in Mexico. It's not always that special here.
I know. Yeah, I haven't tried it. That's why I ask you because I haven't tried
Tamales
it.
Elena, it has a very solid menudo.
I love menudo, man. Yeah, I like libro though from the menudo, that part, that texture.
Right.
I like it. Y había un lugar en Guadalajara. There was a place in Guadalajara that I used to go a lot. It was the slaughterhouse. They had a lot of little restaurants outside of the slaughterhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of cruel, but that they have restaurants outside of the slaughterhouse.
It's convenient.
It's very convenient. The food was very fresh. The best birria, the best carnitas, the best carne asada that you could imagine, the best salsas everywhere, like in a radius that you could go. And
Was this like the Mercado de Abastos?
it was close to the Mercado de Abastos.
Because there's really great menudo in that Mercado.
Yeah, Mercado de Abastos, they should have like very good. In all Mercado de Abastos, you go. It's you need to know like the right place, but not all of them are good. I remember when I used to go a lot to those places. Now it's a little kind of hard to go and not stay there less than 2 hours, you know, because you take a lot of pictures. But I used to enjoy a lot to go to those places and to drive across the city just to go to a mercado in Mexico City. You know, they keep on doing those mercados since the Aztecs, and they're all over. When you fly over Mexico City next time, I'm pretty sure that you're aware of it, but all our friends that are listening to this, when you fly over Mexico City and it's clear day, look for little pink worms that are around the city, like pink little worms that occupy maybe 5 blocks or 7 blocks. Those are mercados. Like, they move every day from area to area. But if you work in a mercado, you're working the whole week. You work from Monday to Sunday. You just move your store, whatever you sell. And the food part of that, those mercados, some of them are so freaking amazing.
They are.
Like birria and tacos and all the Mexican goodies that don't make you fat.
Oops. Didn't work. Yeah, I mean, I think the best menudo I've ever had is in Jalisco and Ciudad de Mexico. You get all the parts, all the cuts. You like Teddy's Red Tacos, obviously. Mm-hmm. So what are your favorite food trucks in Los Angeles?
Okay, you know that I used to have one?
No.
Yeah.
You don't even know.
Yeah. It was an organic food truck that it was not healthy, it was just organic.
I like that. I like that even better.
That's it. Because the menu that we designed for the food truck was very not good for you, but very, very good for your taste buds. It did pretty well, but I needed like 6 of them in order like to really create the business that I was expecting. And I didn't move on with that. Chicali Town, do you know that one?
Chicali?
Oh no, Chicali Town, that's a restaurant in Hermosillo. Asadero Chicali.
Asadero Chicali.
Asadero Chicali. Yeah, Chicali Town, saludos. They're in Hermosillo.
They started as a truck, now they have a restaurant.
Yes. I didn't know about the restaurant. I went to look for them when they were very far from my house. You know, Instagram is magic, right?
Yeah.
Especially to find food. Most of the time, they don't disappoint. I found Teddy on Instagram also.
Right.
And I was so much into birria all my life. I've been Zacatecas. It's a birria.
It is a birria city.
Yes, sir. So
state.
Yeah. It's state. You know, they do it differently, different places, but they do it chivo and borrego and cow. And
it's the one thing that blew me away was you guys do tortas de birria.
Yeah, and they're
ahogada.
Good. They're good.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know, man. I know. And so I was very happy when back in the day, like I don't know, 10 years ago when I used to live here, there was this trend about birria tacos here in LA.
Yeah, right.
I think it started here in LA.
The Tijuana craze this guy over there started it.
Yeah.
Teddy.
I mean, Tijuana probably, but
it's coming from Tijuana.
Really?
He trained in Tijuana. He learned there.
Well,
he brought the recipe here.
My first wife was from Tijuana, and I married her 35 years ago. So 35 years ago, birria tacos didn't exist in Tijuana. You know, they didn't. Because what was famous in Tijuana was either the fish tacos or las humaderas and mm-hmm. you know, steak tacos and harina tacos like that, but not birria.
Carne asada adobada.
Carne asada adobada. No te encontrabas. You couldn't find a lot of pastor. You know. But now Tijuana they come up with a lot of stuff. This being one of them, you know, amazing, and it like grew really fast.
It's become a worldwide thing.
Yes, and I'm so glad for it because I love it so much, and I can order it everywhere now. It's amazing. I mean, not everybody does things like Teddy, of course, because this is like really, 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 really good, like really Mexican good, you know?
Yeah. Agreed.
So I love it. I'm glad that I can eat chile because this thing is hot. Yeah.
It's always fun to have guests on, but sometimes I like to go rogue, go solo, do one of your favorite rants on Mexican cuisine or Latin American cuisine, and with the goal of educating and helping. Many young chefs have mentioned on Instagram that my travels and the things that I talk about have kind of helped them since, you know, this is a time when they can't really get out of their kitchens. It's a tough time to leave right now in this economy. One of my favorite episodes was having the chance to share my go-to taco crawls with you. Here's my rundown of how to craft the perfect taco crawl in LA. Provecho.
So my ultimate taco crawl, like if I'm going to take my writer friend and they're down, like they're going to be all day with me and really go for it. So we're going to start at Barbacoa Ramirez. And this place is amazing. It's the only place of its kind. The owners, the Ramirez family, they raise their own lambs, they feed them, they butcher them, and just have this wonderful cook. They roast it underground, of course, but all their salsas, their sides, their amazing blood sausage. Even when you go to Mexico, there are people that don't raise their own lambs. They buy them. And of course, it's easier for them to do that there. But this guy is a real, true artisan. There's just nothing like it. So go there. That's where we're going to start. Right there in Arleta, right across the street from the DMV, Barbacoa Ramirez, a very special place. Los Sabrosos. That's the tacos de puerquito echado, the suckling pig tacos with the mustard salsa. Again, something from Nayarit. It's the only place you can go for this in Los Angeles. It's a place that blows me away every time, and everybody that goes with me loves this place. And if they don't, well, they're not getting a second taco tour from me. Kawamanta y Mariscos Lao. Very obscure. I keep that place on my list because it's very special to me. People here don't know Kawamanta. And it's also like, in this little stand, and it's in a row of a bunch of stands. So I assume a lot of people don't make it out to this place. But this is stingray soup with shrimp. And I love going there. Now, they do tacos that are really amazing, but I actually like to just get the stingray soup and make my own tacos with it. And the stand is amazing. One of my favorites. And again, if you go there with me, likely you're probably never going to make it back there again, some of these places, because they're a little far, a little obscure. They're not on TikTok, they're not trending. They don't have some stupid influencer being paid to hype them up. So they just have me and Eater. That's all they got. Casa Gishbak, always. We always go for Maria Ramos's barbacoa enchilada. Always. Always. She's a treasure. I'm going to say that every time I talk about her. She's a local treasure, indigenous Zapoteca chef, traditional cook, and she kicks ass. Her restaurant is amazing. But on the taco crawl, the barbacoa enchilada at Casa Gishbak. The tacos a la plancha at Taquearte. And we break the rules on this crawl. We get the chilaquiles every time. I cannot go there and not get those. And on another episode, we'll talk about why that's the only place that makes real chilaquiles mexicanos here in Los Angeles. Yeah. You have your whatever. I don't care if you like other chilaquiles, but it's one of those dishes we just don't do very well here in the U.S. You can go to a crap motel in Tijuana and their buffet, and their chilaquiles are going to be better than 90% of the places here. So I don't know why that is. I do know why that is, but it's a salsa issue. There's a special salsa, and that's really important. And there's a ratio thing of cream and cheese that makes the dish very expensive. So people just give you chips and salsa. They don't give you the cream and all that stuff. So anyways, yeah, they'll do the streaks, but that's not the way they do it, man. They dump it on there. It's got to be a lot. So you're teasing us with those streaks. There's actually not very much crema. That has to be there. And those, as I said, those salsas are life-changing. Tacos La Carreta is a crowd pleaser. Everybody loves carne asada. If you don't have any experience with Mexican food or little experience, and even if you have mid-level experience, everybody loves steak tacos. And of course, pros like us, those pros out there that are identifying with me, we love carne asada too. So Tacos La Carreta, again, a perfect version. The salsa tatemada is great. The cook is great. The tortillas, their torito, where you get carne asada, cheese, and a grilled Anaheim chili is amazing. And then, depending, if you got a good sized group and you can do this, we can kind of count our bites and bite count. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but if you watch your bites, you can hit all these places in one day. I've done it before. And the crowd pleasers, El Momo, Mariscos Jalisco, are places that if they haven't been, they got to go. So we can do all. That's like my favorite taco crawl in that area. And that's going from, Boyle Heights on down to, Ramirez up there in Arleta, all the way down to Carey for Los Sabrosos, going to Pico Rivera for Taquearte. So that's a lot of driving around. That's a mission. And again, only people that are my people are going to get that tour.
Of course, we're about more than food on Taqueando. We love wine. If you follow me, you know about me and wine pairings and wine flights and wine tasting. And no region has really turned me on over the last decades than this place. But it has captured the imagination of the general public more in recent years. And that is the Valle de Guadalupe. That's why I was so excited to speak with my good friend Lulu Martinez of Bruma Vinícola. Here she is discussing what makes Valle wine so special.
I don't understand how people that recognize Mexican food can't grasp how Mexican wine makes sense too, because it's part of our land.
Yeah.
We tend to forget that wine comes out of agriculture, which is the truth. Wine comes out of the fields, not of a laboratory, not out of a tank, not out of a fermentation random process. It comes from something that's living and from the land. And who can deny that Mexicans aren't good in our land? We live for our land. We live with our soils. So I just feel like there's this, like you said, snobbish thing about wine that takes it away from the fields and from our lands and is disconnected from what it really is. For me, it makes so much sense that Mexico has great wine, is getting there. We might not have the history behind it, but we're building it.
Right.
But the product, which is grapes, we know how to do that. We know how to agriculture. That's what we do.
It's an incredibly young wine region.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people, I mean, it starts in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Professionally, it does.
Right. Before they were growing grapes to make brandy.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the growers were selling their grapes to Domecq and these big companies that were making brandy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when my grandfather drank El Presidente,
of course,
you know, we'd never heard of Mexican wine. And so it was in the early 80s, some of the people started to say, you know, we're going to make wine. And they decided to make a wine industry. Yeah. And then you have the Jugo de Acosta breaking out in the 90s.
Yeah.
And before that, there were houses like Chateau Camot and Montechanique that had prestige, but a lot of the wineries, the early wineries, weren't that great. Mm-hmm. But what people don't understand is that they were experimenting and learning, and even a lot of those wineries,
of course,
have gotten a lot better. But in a short time, after the wine school was opened up, and you know, also when the tourism really kicked in, it really has grown exponentially, and it's gotten so good so fast.
Yeah,
I doubt that you could go to the first 40 years of winemaking in France and have expected such great results. It took France thousands of years.
I agree. And I think a lot of it has to do with precisely that, how young we are and how there's no expectation. Since there's no history behind it,
right?
We can innovate and we don't insult anyone and we don't have to fight against the system because there's none, right? It's so new that we can do whatever we want and it's not a problem. Whereas in Europe, there's this big, heavy, sometimes cultural heritage, which makes it tricky to evolve and try new things. For us, there's so much liberty that we've been just kind of really advancing at huge steps because we can experiment. And can we say bad words in this or no?
Yeah, we can say bad words.
We can fuck it. Okay, great. So we can fuck it up and nobody would even care because they don't expect anything about a Mexican wine. Whereas you talk about Bordeaux and you change the color of the label and it could be, it could be disastrous.
Right.
For us, it's like, hey, we don't care. We can change things around, do one vintage, change that blend, do another blend, team up. Everything's okay. And I think that has made us advance so much.
Yeah.
No limits.
Right. And so the early houses like Chateau Camot, Montechanique, they were modeling themselves after French wineries, doing Bordeaux blends. And a lot of people still kind of do that. But, that doesn't necessarily work in a region where we don't do we know what the principal grapes yet of the Valle de Guadalupe are? We don't know yet.
I don't think so. I always talk about, how there's like dog years.
Yeah.
Like one normal year for us is like 7 years for a dog.
Right.
There's wine years too. And that's a big problem because wine years are much longer than dog years. It's like everything takes more time because when you plant a certified plant, that means it's 3 years old. Before it starts producing, that's 4 years. So you're 7 years in and you haven't even produced one bottle of wine. Then you produce a bottle of wine and might be good or not. You might be okay with a varietal, but maybe that year it was super hot or it was super cold or you didn't have enough sunshine, whatever might have happened. So you might take, after 3 or 4 years after that, have a tendency. You're already 10 or 12 years in and you still don't have a fucking clue of what's going on. If it's adapted to your terroir.
Right.
So, you've just talked about 1980s. We might have been experiencing with different varietals now for 45 years, which is basically 1 or 2 plantations. That's it.
Right.
So we're still very, very young. So talking about one varietal that works, not sure. There's definitely a tendency. We've talked, about Nebbiolo. Nebbiolo is a big thing in Mexico. We're in Baja. Is it really Nebbiolo? Is it not Nebbiolo? That's a whole other conversation. But the Nebbiolo that we call Nebbiolo is very popular and widely planted. I think that makes a lot of sense. I personally love Chenin in whites. I love Chenin.
There are definitely grapes that are used a lot, but you wouldn't say, well, these are the white grapes of the Valle de Guadalupe, like the way it's so rigid in Bordeaux, Burgundy, Rhone, and these appellations. And so, yes, Chenin Blanc in the Valle is wonderful.
Beautiful. It's a good performer. It's like, for me, at the precise moment where we're at, I wouldn't be able to say there's one varietal for whites, one varietal for reds. I would definitely say there are certain varietals that perform generally really well in Baja. So we might explore that route, right?
Right.
We might go that way. Will that be the final word? I don't know, but at least it's obvious that there are certain varietals that perform really well in Valle.
Right. But you're still young enough. And when you are this young as a wine region, you're also going to say, you know what? I'm just going to plant this year. I'm going to plant these grapes and just see what happens. Because, I mean, even if you're in Bordeaux, you have to deal with the annual climate, water, rainfall, and all those factors that you have to make these adjustments. But they're no longer looking at which grapes to plant. And they have old vines, and their methods are standardized for the appellation. So there's a lot of things that you can do now that I think that's what's I think fun about Mexican wine.
We know that Mexico gets all the flowers, gets all the coverage, gets all the love. But as always, in my own coverage as a writer, I've talked about Central America, South America, the Caribbean. I want to explore all of Latin America. So we also ventured to countries other than Mexico in 2025 here on the podcast. For example, Panama. Chef Jose Olmedo Carles Rojas of Simón in Venice is one of the foremost proponents of Panamanian cuisine in the world. And we're lucky to have him cooking in the City of Angels, or the City of Venice. Here he is telling us about the unexpected challenges of bringing Panamanian cuisine to LA and how he's navigated them.
So now with Simón, you have this, again, you're right. It's funny that you are in this elite group in the world in Latin America, but you're not Mexican. Which we know Mexican over here. We obviously everybody knew Enrique Olvera when he opened, and even Carlos Gaitan. In Paseo, people know about him. But Panama, people are like, I heard people talking about, I'm gonna go to this new. I think it's like Honduran or it's something Central American. They had no idea. And of course, I saw on Reddit. It was funny when I was kind of doing some research. Is there was a Reddit thread that says, is there such thing as Panamanian food? Right. Which is right. which we know there is.
Yes.
But so now, you know, with the diners, I know that you had, you know, a miss with a dish that I love. So you lost a menu item, huacho, which is one of the cultural dishes of Panama that people just could not understand, because I heard people criticizing the texture, because it's like, it's all one texture. They want other textures. I'm like, it's a porridge, and nobody really, like, if people eat congee, they're not asking about different textures.
Yes.
They understand it's a porridge.
Yeah.
And of course, also they were not putting the ajichombo, the hot sauce, which really adds that other level of flavor. And I think probably people were looking at that like, well, what am I supposed to eat?
How do I eat this?
And you said somebody asked for.
Oh, people will ask for rice.
Rice to eat with rice.
To eat with that, yeah.
Okay, so this is a challenge you're having, and
yes.
How long has the restaurant been open?
So I think we are a little bit over, maybe like just 2 years now. Maybe like, I would say.
Right.
2 years.
So you've had to make some adjustments. So can you talk about that experience of really, Panamanian cuisine or the idea of Panamanian cuisine, and now trying to represent Central American cuisine here in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I would say like the biggest challenge has been like, more than a challenge, I think it's been kind of like understanding that like sometimes I gotta hold back to show things that are like very unique from our country, because people necessarily isn't ready, or maybe is not to what they're used to. So things like the huacho, for example, we will have 50% of people saying like, literally, this dish changed my life. It's so amazing. I know for you it was like amazing.
I'm kind of pissed tonight that I didn't have it.
And then you will have the other people that will have it like probably next to you the same day you have it. Like maybe it was cooking the same pot I was cooking yours at the same time, flavored the same way with the same love, you know. And then we just wouldn't get it, you know.
Right.
I don't know if it's like a expectation thing, or maybe the way it's explained on the menu, or people just comparing like because they never understood, like they were expecting like more like a traditional porridge that is like more subtle with condiments instead of this like heavily spiced like huacho, which is the way that we eat it in Panama. So definitely I think with dishes like that, and I would say probably like that's been like the one dish that's been a challenge, but I'm not giving up. I think like I will find, you know, whenever people is kind of like they don't expect it, I'm gonna hit them with a huacho again, and you know, like see what happens, you know. Like I know one day people probably will be more open, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's another challenge, right? Is that how do you pull back without losing the essence of the restaurant? Because this is the problem.
Yep.
Is that you start to, I've seen other restaurants in LA, I'm not going to mention, that like they're coming from a point of view of South American, Central American, and they pull back so far that there's nothing left, you know, there's nothing left of that cuisine. And then when I go there, I'm like, well, what was special about coming here, and the idea of coming here is now gone. Yeah. You know, with a crowd that, let's face it, they don't know anything about this cuisine. And even when they're here and loving your food, they don't even know, like they don't have a connection to it. They just like, oh, I like this restaurant. Yeah. And they like your flavors, and they like the spice that's here. Yeah. But they don't even realize that, you're coming from a place that's spicy. So there's a lack of understanding, but it's Monday night and you're packed. So you're doing something right. Yeah,
I think honestly, like there was a little moment I would say, like, and it was probably like 4 to 5 months ago, where I tried a couple of dishes, thinking of like what LA likes around all restaurants, like people like this or like that, and I was like, I'm gonna try to do a Panamanian version of this, right? Like what was still with our flavors, with the spices, and they were delicious, they were good, but every time I would put those dishes out, I felt like a part of my soul was like gone, right? You know, and no matter how good, how tasty they were like, you know what, fuck it, like let's never forget who we are and the reason we became special, right? So I think the main thing, because it is a business too, and you also gotta be smart, is that when we opened Simon, we always said that conceptually we were gonna explore Central America for the point of view of a Central American living in LA with all the things that LA has to offer, right? So by that, what do I mean? I think in LA, people enjoys product is very important. I think it's like one of the main things. So without like losing touch, like of who we are in our flavors, we've been tapping in a couple of things in the menu. I wouldn't say the whole menu, but like certain items where it's like a lot about like the product with like Central American seasoning,
Yeah, what are some of the dishes that are?
I would say even like the campache in banana leaf, right? That's like a beautiful piece of fish, but it's wrapped in a banana leaf with some particular spices, and there's not much going on, but like the spices, the cooking, and the product.
Right.
So it's still unique. It's still not like your typical fish that you're gonna find in any other restaurant. I don't think there's another campache like that particular like that I've seen, but it's like a product that people is like, oh, it's a piece of fish,
Right.
and I can eat it, and it's not covering a sauce, that is hiding the flavors like too much, So I would say that's like a good example, But then obviously like we mix it up with things like a bollo or like a pupusa, or like the version of the tostada. But then we can go back to do a clam ceviche that is like very clean, So
And for our listeners, a bollo is?
A bollo is a sweet corn. Well, there's different bollos, but bollo de maíz nuevos, or like a sweet corn tamal. Bollo is like a tamal shape. It's more cylinder shape.
Yeah.
And it's not stuffed. It's just the corn. And it's very common in Panama. So here we do kind of like with sauces on top, but the one that you have in Panama.
And it's a breakfast dish, and it's typically...
It is breakfast, but it's also like snack.
Okay.
But it's mostly breakfast.
And it's usually covered in a cream.
Traditionally, like people will slice it, and they will like, after it's like, if they let it cool. Once it's cold, like they slice it, and then they will cook it like in a little bit of butter in a pan. And that's kind of like with maybe some cheese or something like that, they eat it. But then you also have bollo preñado, which is kind of like a stuffed bollo, which is, again, not a tamal, because tamal for us is completely different,
right?
And bollo preñado traditionally has like a chicharrón or cheese on the inside, or our version of fonda locay that you had, which is like with the octopus, but zero traditional, right? But
no, that's like on steroids. That bollo, it's so full of flavor.
Yeah. So I think in LA, we are trying to be ourselves, first of all, but also like we are a sexy restaurant. Yeah, we are a place that is definitely trying to show people that Central American is not just the mom and pop's place, which we all love. Like I freaking love like mom and pop Central American restaurants. But like the Central American food could be like talk about when it comes about like high level, call it fine dining, or just like dining in general, or just contemporary food. Like we can compete with anybody in the world. We're just our own thing, and you might like more Central America, or you might like more Chinese or more Mexican. But we are in a conversation, nobody can deny us now, and that's what we're trying to do,
We can't talk about 2025 without addressing the challenges, the horrors, the terrorism we faced here in Los Angeles. Perhaps chief among them has been this administration's reign of terror, kidnapping our friends, our neighbors from our streets, a horror that's played out on the national stage and has made America an embarrassment, a violator of human rights and freedoms. While every industry has been impacted, restaurants and street vendors have directly felt the impacts of the raids in a most heinous fashion. Here's my friend, Chef Ray Garcia of Broken Spanish Comedor, talking about why immigrants aren't just a key complement of our restaurant economy, they are its heart and soul. My grandfather was hauled tomatoes. He was a union truck driver, and he drove to Bakersfield every morning and picked up stuff and dropped stuff off and came back to Stockton, California. And my grandmother worked in the cannery until she started to have health problems, but she was sorting tomatoes. My cousins were in the field picking. My dad was undocumented. He came across the border when he was 1 and just
he back then you could get a driver's license and Social Security. There wasn't that big of an issue. And he managed to live all his life because he didn't really travel internationally. So he never had to worry about, he never flew anywhere. So he didn't have to worry about it. And, he lived until his death here in the United States, undocumented. But, my parents also did not want me to go into the tomato picking business, and going to a high school, going through school as I did, and going to a university to study music. My path was very different from my grandparents and my father's. And I think that's very American, right? That you want your kids to do better. You don't want them to have the same struggles. And that makes sense. And so, yeah, people aren't lazy because they don't want to wash dishes. It's their path is just different now. It changes with each generation.
Yeah, I think you do the best that you can. You do with what you have access to, and I think whether they knew it or not, whether this was their goal or their end game. My parents, my grandparents, great grandparents, everyone was working towards creating better access for me, so that I could be the first in my family's history to go to college, to own my own business, to hit all these dreams that I think that they originally maybe didn't even have for themselves, but had when they decided to move to this country for opportunity.
Yeah, and it's right. And so again, we have undocumented workers that are because no one's giving them visas. We could give them visas, mm-hmm. but no one is doing that. And these farms right now, there's a lot of farms that have been shut down recently because of raids. Construction sites shut down. I have one vendor who, it's horrible. I mean, he had to close his restaurant down. He's a street vendor. And then he's like, okay, I have no other work. So he went to go do his other job, which is construction. And he showed up to the site and he sent me a video, and he was the only one on the job. Like, no one else was there. He had a 5-man crew working on a house, and they didn't show up that day because they're afraid they're going to get grabbed. And so, I mean, that's the other part of it, is that restaurants don't get built without undocumented workers. So there's also the construction and maintenance aspects of restaurants that also, would you say that also relies on undocumented labor?
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of restaurants, it's like, okay, who, when everyone's clocked out, like, who's cleaning your kitchen? Who's cleaning the hoods? Who is it that's coming in and taking out the trash? Who's going through the trash and getting the recycling out? It's not me. It's somebody else who needs that job. And it's 100%, just being, it's not something that we're getting a line out the door of people who are asking for those positions. They're hard, they're thankless, they're grueling. They, a lot of times, I don't know how other companies do it, but a lot of these positions, they don't pay well.
Yeah.
And to your point, people are looking for, a better opportunity, a better day.
Right. I mean, a lot of the undocumented workers that I've met over the years in the restaurant industry want hours. So they will do it by hours. So like you said, they're the first ones at the restaurant and they're the last ones to leave. And so they're going to get their hours in to do all these things. And then a lot of them are going to go to another job. They're working several jobs. I know undocumented workers that will work 3 restaurants, and which one do they like the most? The one that gives them the most hours. I mean, that's not all cases, but yeah, it's all these positions that really help the restaurant open, help the restaurant be supplied. They're closing restaurants, and really, it's this paradox right now where there's a certain part of the population complaining about, well, what are we going to do about this problem? But they're also going into restaurants and they're getting sticker shock. They're going like, how come this food is so expensive? You know?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where I think as a whole, the people just, you know, put their heads in the sand, and they don't want to, you know, they don't want to know, you know, they just, you know, the invisible people are making our food, are cleaning our homes, are watching our kids. We don't want to know their status. And, you know, when you look at the food system, you know, we're in a country where people, you know, they don't want to know how the sausage is made, but they want to have it for breakfast every morning.
Yeah. And they want it cheap.
Yeah. And they want it cheap. You know, and that's the reality, I think, that we're in. And, you know, I think that there's the idea that, you know, I think you kind of touched upon it, that, okay, these people are, you know, the undocumented are taking our jobs. And, you know, that's not the case. I don't know anybody who intentionally hires for, you know, putting up a premium on, you're undocumented, here you go to the top of the front of the line. You know, they're the only people in the line looking to do some of these thankless jobs.
Unfortunately, not everybody in a position of power was as outspoken as Ray. On Taqueando, we made sure to call out the people who have profited off of Mexican culture, but who remained silent during the raids, people from our own community. Here is an excerpt of my conversation with my longtime friend, colleague, Gustavo Arellano, in which we call out one particularly galling absentee from the conversation.
You know, one person comes to mind is an old familiar face that we've talked about before.
I think I know who you're going to say.
You know, as far as I know, there's only one chef that cooks. I'm not going to call him a Mexican chef. One chef that cooks Mexican food that's ever cooked for a president. He cooked for Obama.
Oh,
that's
Rick Bayless.
Chef Rick Bayless. Okay. I have to say, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, oh, these Rick Bayless haters.
These Mexicans, these jealous Mexicans.
They're right. They're against him. They're haters. But you know what? We like Rick Bayless more than Skip Bayless does. That was cold. That wasn't all right. That was cold. But you know what? Under the circumstances, we're going to keep that.
Fucking ice.
That's right. That was ice cold.
That was ice cold, man.
Yes. So Rick Bayless, you and I have this history. You, myself, and the late Jonathan Gold. So in 2010, on my old blog, I wrote a very, very, I'm going to say it's a very good takedown. Would you agree it's a pretty good takedown?
Withering. It's better than good. It's withering.
Withering takedown. You heard it, folks. Withering. Of his restaurant Red O, when he was the, I want to say he was the executive chef or consulting chef.
Consulting chef.
And so, you know, the reason I did it at the time was he had insulted Mexican food in Los Angeles. He said that LA had tacos and burritos, and that's fine. He goes, but I'm bringing Southern Mexican food. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? The second largest Oaxacan city on earth, and you're bringing Southern Mexican. So, you know, I did this withering takedown of his restaurant based on my dining experience. While I did use hyperbole and was aggressive, I think Jonathan Gold called me Maoist in my, you know, the way I was addressing Mexican food in the article. But the, you know, it was based on what I experienced as a diner having his food at Red O.
You said that the oysters were not Baja, they were Long Beach.
I think they were mussels.
Mussels, yeah. One of the shellfish.
They did not taste very good, and they didn't have that pop of a really, you know, a wonderful mussel dish. Yeah, I think they said they tasted more like Long Beach Pier or something like that.
Now, again, withering. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that was over the top, I'll admit, but it was necessary at the time. Now, something happened after I wrote this thing that involved you.
Yeah, no, I was at Well, it was a meeting for the California Chicano News Media Association.
Yeah.
The original location of Marché Moderne in South Coast Plaza, now occupied by Knife Fleet, which is an absolutely amazing restaurant, Michelin starred. Go check it out. And so Jonathan was there, and he admitted, he's like, I kind of don't know what I'm doing here, talking about food, and it was I think it was like in honor of Ruben Salazar, and then because he started talking about Ruben Salazar, it's like, the martyred
Right.
LA Times columnist who got killed by a tear gas canister shot to his head by an LA County sheriff's deputy in 1970 during the Chicano moratorium.
Right.
But he then starts talking, because Jonathan was such a great speaker along with the writer, and he said, look, like, we associate Ruben with radical Chicano politics, and his columns were great. But this was actually a gourmand as well. He loved a good French wine. He loved French food. He lived in Orange County, actually,
Yes.
in the richer part of Santana, closer to what's called the South Coast metro area. And then he starts mentioning Rick Bayless, and he says, like, yeah, his food's fine, but this idea that, like, he's got to bring authentic flavors to Los Angeles, it just seems a little bit silly.
Right.
And so he said something, he made a joke, and I just wrote about it. For me, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, he's talking about Rick Bayless. And I didn't know, by the way, that I had not read your piece yet. I had read you before, but I had not read that particular piece yet. I didn't know that about this Red O and all of that. So I just post this innocuous blog post for the OC Weekly, the newspaper that I used to edit, just saying, oh yeah, by the way, this is what Jonathan, hey, and I went there more because, like, oh cool, Jonathan Gold's in LA and he's giving a little speech. And then I remember on a Sunday, I just start getting all these hate messages.
Right.
All these comments. Back when blogs used to have comments, unfiltered comments. And the first person there was, like, Rick Bayless. And I can't remember the exact quote, but he's like, oh, I guess they give Pulitzers for lying or something like that.
Yeah, it was on Twitter.
Okay.
He called out Rick Bayless attacked Jonathan Gold on Twitter. You and I were in the arguments in the comment section with all these people fighting for like a week.
Yeah, well, no, but so Rick Bayless left a comment there as well on the blog post. And I thought, like, oh, it has to be fake. Like, we always get celebrities. Yeah, right. So I tracked the URL and it was directly to Chicago. And then that's when I noticed that he tweeted out my story and I'm like, oh my God. And so, yeah, it made national news.
Right.
And then that's when I met you via online, because you were getting in there and you said, hey, by the way, did you see this clip that he gave to NBC4 where he said, like, they asked him, why are you coming to LA? It's like, oh, I just thought it would be interesting to see how the authentic flavors of Mexico would play out in LA. And I'm like, who the hell are you? Of course, I knew who Rick Bayless was. But even me as an Orange County guy, I mean, look, I wrote a book, Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America. So I know the power of Mexican food, the regionality of Mexican food in Los Angeles, because it's also the same in Orange County. We once did a food issue, and I think it was, 24 of the 33 states in of Mexico were represented in Orange County. And that's Orange County, which is supposed to be white and is not nearly as Latino as Los Angeles. So for him to come in like a fucking colonizer to say, yeah, I'm going to teach you Mexicans here what quote unquote real Mexican food is, give me a goddamn break.
Yeah.
And his food sucked, by the way. His food was whatever. Yeah, when I went with my former food critic, Edwin Goey, and of course, no one knows who he looks like.
Right.
So I had the stuff. I remember, I think he did like a yellowtail aguachile. I'm like, dude, what are you doing, man? This is not working.
His food's tired. It's weird how he's always so passively insulting of Mexican cooks and other people that cook Mexican food and even the whole culture. But, and then, of course, after all that, yes, I agree with you. I mean, that was what I experienced at Red O, is that, like, oh my gosh, this is not even it, right? We already have we have stuff much better than this here. But then Jonathan Gold put the nail in the coffin. I mean, he wrote one of his rare negative reviews. It wasn't overtly negative, but he basically said he agreed with a lot of what I wrote in my blog. And he kind of gave Rick a mixed thing. He liked certain things, but Jonathan Gold almost never wrote negative reviews. So I would count this as one of right up there with
Olive Garden.
And then David Chang's Major Domo. Olive Garden, and making fun of Mission burritos, comparing them to the burritos in Southern California. So that was kind of the final. The three of us sort of were like the three musketeers defending the Southern Mexican cuisine of Los Angeles. And so, Rick Bayless, over the years, he doesn't like us. He blocked me on Twitter.
Damn.
But guess what, man? When I started this podcast, and our first episode was with Enrique Olvera, Chef Enrique Olvera.
With Enrique, yeah.
Rick Bayless started following me and the podcast.
Interesting. What's up, Rick?
Interesting. I don't think it was him. It must be his people. And like they didn't tell him like, hey, it's this guy, But over the decades, Rick has continued to be this way. He's continued. I want to say that while there are episodes out there and moments of cultural appropriation, to me, over the course of, the time I've been in journalism, the only person that consistently, strongly, proudly is a cultural appropriator is Rick Bayless when it comes to Mexican food. I can't think of anybody else that really goes to the length that he does. I mean, he's also, he's profited a lot. He sold his Frontera Foods line, chips and salsas. He was able to get in really early. He opened a restaurant. He will talk in interviews about his struggles, but he was able to open a Mexican restaurant, start a television show, start a book from the get-go with having zero experience cooking Mexican food, And so he really did have a privileged position. And he's cooked at the White House. He gets to go out and diss Mexican food in LA. He did it again in San Francisco, saying that they didn't have great traditions there, not the food that he's used to seeing in Mexico. You remember that, right?
No, I so have blocked him out after that because I liked Rick. I had been to his restaurants in Chicago. I thought they were fine. I thought that it was important for anyone to promote some of these regional styles. And the entire and I wanted to interview him for my book, but the entire episode was just so pathetic. I'm like, dude, that's who you are? Really? You're someone who probably the money that you could find on your couch right now is probably more money than I could ever make in my lifetime. And you're going to be so petty as to care what some rando in Orange County wrote when documenting a food legend like Jonathan Golden has to say about your restaurant. Like, give me a goddamn break.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Well, I have archived and collected a bunch of interviews of his because I think a lot of people don't understand when they talk about Rick Bayless, they just think of him, oh, he's a guy that cooks, he researches and he cooks Mexican food.
He's an anthropologist by training.
And you know what? If they actually watched his interviews, they'd realize he's not an anthropologist, And so I've dug into these things a little bit. And what's weird is that he talks about mole all the time, but yet doesn't really understand it. That's beside the point. And I could go on another hour about that. He does understand that it comes from families, but he doesn't understand the evolution of that. He thinks because it's got European ingredients, it's not an indigenous dish. He argued that with somebody that was Mexican. I'm like, you're arguing with indigenous people in Mexico about this dish that's been around, that was created by indigenous people that were so smart. They made corn, they invented corn, they invented nixtamal, a super advanced technique, and they made this incredible healthy cuisine. And they had mole. They were making things with chiles. And there's moles all over Mexico that are very simple, 4 ingredients, 5 ingredients. He only thinks about mole poblano and mole negro oaxaqueño, and he's like, oh, it has 50 ingredients. Like, dude, those are a couple of moles. There's hundreds, and they are more original. Some are thickened with corn. They're not thickened with bread.
Yeah.
They're very original. And he can't understand that. How does a guy that's supposed to be an anthropologist not understand that? And he said this about himself in this interview show in Chicago. I think it's incredibly strange with the enormous Mexican population that we have in this country, that there's no one that stepped forward, he means like himself, and done this kind of stuff. And he was talking about these cooks that taught him, but he never mentions their names.
Of course.
And he's looked over their shoulders. He's stared at their hands. He stared at their ingredients. And he said this on this show. It was crazy. He said, "I'd gladly step aside if someone would step up." Can you believe? So I'm saying there's more to him. And when we criticized him, he said, well, I hope that these people, and he did, I couldn't find that interview. He did say I think these Mexican-American guys, he was talking about you and me, have a chip on their shoulder, and he accused us of reverse racism, which is crazy.
Really? I do not know any of that.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen that. And then, he said, well, if they were to ask me, I talk about my passion for the food. And I'm like, okay, Rick Bayless definitely has passion for Mexican food. There's no doubt about that. I would say that more than a passion, he fetishizes Mexican food.
Yeah.
He's really interested in anything that's exotic and different. He thinks that that's what makes his restaurant special. Our Cielito Lindo is lame to him. He's more interested in something that's from this little village in Chiapas that has nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
And he's going to steal that. And then that's going to be more interesting than, this Mexican-American food or something in the north.
It's the same elitism of Diana Kennedy and the fresas of a previous generation in Mexico.
Right.
That the Mexican in the United States, the so-called Mexican-American, the Chicano, that were somehow lesser than Mexicans in Mexico. I've always embraced the idea of Americo Paredes saying,
right,
Mexico Profundo, greater Mexico. Like the border, remember folks,
right,
borders are arbitrary constructions done by humans. Culture goes across borders. And so to insult the food of Mexican Americans, it's just a fool's game. And now, are some foods better than other foods? Of course, 1,000%. Some foods are going to be better than other foods, but it's all part of the grand scheme of Mexican food. And Rick, it's one of those conversations like, okay, I'll step down when someone else steps up.
Right.
How many people could easily step up but does not have the privilege of someone like Rick? You don't think a Carlos Salgado could have done it? You don't think, yeah, they did it. But they didn't get the book deals. They didn't get the television shows. Wes Avila didn't get the television shows. None of these guys got it because they didn't know the right people. And the bigger sin, they were Mexican Americans. And like in the schemata of the United States, a white man, a gaba, doing Mexican food has to know more about it than a Mexican American, because a Mexican American is not the real thing and is going to have some biases. But the white guy, of course, because he's coming at this objectively. He's coming into this with passion. Oh, that word passion.
Right.
Excuses everything.
Right. But never passion for the people. This is stealing. When you sit there and you look over someone's shoulder while they're cooking, and then you write notes and you take it and you go write a recipe and then you say it's yours, you have stolen, and you're not even man enough to credit that person. But I think right now, my problem is, okay, you've slammed Mexican American food. You've told us that no one does regional food like you. Your food is boring. Your food is dated. Some of the plates at Topolobampo and Frontera look like culinary school level plating.
No, props from this. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's props from the film Tortilla Soup.
Right. It's exactly. And so this is not even, it's not cutting edge in any kind of way, but that's really not the problem, Rick. Rick can cook Mexican food. Obviously he does. So if anyone wants to have that conversation, well, why can't he cook? He does cook it. He makes it. He makes more money than any other Mexican. And he also is in this position right now with all this going on. Why isn't Rick Bayless there for us when he's everything about him, everything about his identity is Mexican?
Let's try to be gracious for a second.
Okay.
And say this. Okay. These big raids have been happening on Los Angeles. Rick, his Redos are no longer here.
Yes.
So for Rick to not be saying things, he should, given the, his platform, he absolutely should. Now,
the president mentioned Chicago.
that was just what I was about to say. So that was over the past week that we have been seeing this occupation of Los Angeles and Santana and Paramount and other Long Beach and other federal buildings. Now, today, the day we're recording this podcast, actually late Sunday night, and we're talking about it today, Trump said, we're going to continue these mass raids and we're going to focus specifically on sanctuary cities. But then he called out by name Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. If Rick is not already stepping up by at least, he'll have 24 hours. So by Tuesday morning, if I'm not seeing a post by Rick saying the president has challenged not his hometown, because let's not forget, he's from Oklahoma City or from that region.
Yes.
My adopted hometown of Chicago. He is threatening us. I am standing up for my adopted hometown, Chicago. That is the absolute least he could do, and I could forgive his silence so much. So you're not going to step up for LA? Fine. You're out in Chicago. You're probably not paying attention to LA after we treated you, after we fuera out of you of town. Le dimos la porra, vete a la fregada, or ALV for the Chicanos who love to say that acronym. At least stand up for Chicago, and then from there, stand up for everyone else. And I'll forgive the rest of it. I really will. I really will.
That's very gracious.
I try to be gracious.
I don't know. I think I could possibly overlook decades of just not giving credit to Mexicans and not being polite to Mexican Americans, not respecting other people, the actual Mexicans that cook Mexican food. I don't know if I could overlook that fully, but if he were to use this platform to do this. Now, again, I think he has the biggest national platform when it comes to people who cook Mexican food. There are other celebrity chefs that are Mexican.
Yeah, Pati Ginich, yeah.
Right. And some of them, again, are bound by the fact that they're part of a network. I actually haven't looked at Pati, and she's going to be on our show, but she's on PBS.
She's always great. She's always great, though.
So she's doing her part in so many other ways, And Eva Longoria, she's not a chef, but Eva Longoria spoke up and has been speaking up. And, people have criticized some of these celebrities too because of their ties to other people that are close to Trump. But the fact is they're out there speaking up. Aaron Sanchez is a big brand ambassador.
Huge.
And honestly, he's about the only brown Mexican, the only Mexican that's allowed at all these events. So I think for someone like him, it's a little, it's not like we have 20 chefs out there doing this, right? And so I do see Claudia Cepeda also put something on her.
I saw that, yeah.
Her Instagram. But, they're not able to, I'm not speaking for them. I'm just saying that they're doing what they feel is right, given the fact that they are on television and they are on these platforms. But Rick Bayless is white. He actually has a majority white audience, and he has the national audience, and he's had it for decades. He doesn't and he also has more success than just about any of the people I mentioned, except for Eva Longoria. Financially, Rick Bayless, I don't get it. I don't get why he's still on YouTube trying to just continue to occupy every space with his Mexican food, right? But he doesn't seem to be willing at this point to give any of that up to speak out for the people that he learned from, the people whose recipes he took, the people whose recipes he asked for, the people that have taught him, that he says that taught him, the culture that has really given him an identity. What is Rick Bayless without Mexican food?
The brother of Skip Bayless?
He would be the brother of Skip Bayless working in the barbecue back home that nobody ever heard of.
Savage. Ice cold.
Yeah, and without the money and all the TV shows. So man, you have had so much Mexican food, Mexican people. Forget Mexican food. Mexican people have given Rick Bayless so much. Mexican people, the vendors, have given Latino influencers so much. And again, this isn't about your position on immigration. This is your position as a human being. And as a human being who benefits from the very culture that's being attacked.
Despite the challenges of 2025, we ended the year on a high, welcoming LA Times critic Bill Addison to the podcast to discuss his annual list of the 101 best restaurants in LA. Bill made the unprecedented choice to give the number one spot not to just one restaurant, but to an entire mercado. Here he is explaining why he and his colleague, columnist Jen Harris, made this decision.
I think maybe it's either because I'm on the ground. I think it's also because I'm on the ground, but also just with the decade we've had so far, it's also people are really struggling. They're struggling in ways that I wasn't aware of last decade, when it felt sort of more like in the hopeful LA ascendance, like a financial viability was part of that ascendance. You know what I'm saying? And I feel that feels a lot more challenging for people in the industry now as I see and hear it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things are coming to head right now, with the things you're talking about. When you first came here in the teens, LA was on fire. There were restaurants opening left and right. A lot of great restaurants. But then the pandemic hits and, all the things that have happened from then till now. But 2025 has turned LA into a hellscape with wildfires, the ice raids, all these crazy, unpredictable tariffs, the rising costs of food and utilities, healthcare costs going through the roof, and generally horrible federal policies that affect the food. I mean, affecting everyone, but especially that affect farmers and these small restaurants, right? But yet the list kind of gives me a little hope. Your 101 list is that, there's a lot of new restaurants still opening that are doing great. And yes, they're dealing with challenges that they didn't have before. But I have to say that I was looking at the list and I was thinking, well, there's actually a lot of restaurants that are pretty new right now that are very exciting. And I've been to some of them and people are going there. I mean, it's something.
Well, that moves me. Thank you. Because I would say we all could use hope right now. And Jen and I invested a lot thinking about hope, because it's what I started to say earlier. It's so painful to be a journalist in this sense, to be an observer, a recorder, and to not, like, I don't want my favorite taco truck in Echo Park to have disappeared and gone into catering mode because they're afraid for their lives. And I don't want to see, a dining room that I love 50% emptier than I hope it will be. And so it's funny because making these lists is all about the investment in the research, the just kind of going crazy dining, and again, it's a responsibility and a privilege to have a budget that allows me to do these things, with so many journalists don't have these days.
Yeah.
And yet it always kind of comes together organically. It's very intentional, but at the same time, I'm not like masterminding, a specific feeling. But Jen and I particularly, like, we can just talk about it, like the number one that we chose for the list this year, we feel it's Mercado La Paloma. It's the whole place. It's not just Hobosh or Comal, which are, I'll just say as a critic, the two most excellent places in the Mercado La Paloma.
Yeah.
But it's the whole place, and what makes that place, and what that place is in the community, that it's the arm of an organization that also invests in housing in historic South Central, that invests in healthcare for the local community there, and it's an organism that it feels hopeful to be in the mercado, doesn't it?
Right. And it's got a vibe. I mean, there's people lined up to eat, and they're, and yes, it's become more interesting. What's fascinating for me is that, I've obviously been going to the Mercado La Paloma for many years, but it used to be more of like an insider thing. The people that were fans of Chichen Itza would go and they would talk about it. Like, that's where you have to go. And it was a cool place to hang out. And there are several other mercados. There's the Mercadito in East LA. There's that strange one that I really love down in Linwood that has like statues, the Angel of Independence down there. And it's trying to replicate sort of a Jalisco style mercado. But this one, I would say that Holbox changed it a lot, but I feel like Comal was the final key to the whole thing by having a molino, a molino inside a mercado in a city where the landlord isn't trying to screw them over because they're successful. And there, like you said, there's all these hope. It is a place of hope. And I would say that Mercado La Paloma is the best of what LA could be.
Amen, brother.
If
I completely agree.
The right people are in charge of your rent, and the right people are working there, and the right restaurants are supporting each other, and the community's coming out, and they're not being overly fussy about weights and all these things, that they're giving this place life and they're making it relevant, and they're, and it's even improved Baja California, which now it's in its second generation, and they've improved their decor. They've been working on their plates, so they've stepped up their game.
Yep, absolutely.
It's a perfectly amazing place.
Perfectly amazing place. And I do a quasi obnoxious thing sometimes where if I see people looking impatient in the Holbox line, I might just casually walk by and be like, there's a nearly equally amazing place right across the way, and there's 2 people in line. You should just go check that out. I mean, all glory to that Holbox line that goes out the building and around the side of the building and along the fence of the parking lot. It's amazing that it exists, and it's great, and it's a confluence of all sorts of influences on the LA dining scene, that Holbox is such a phenomenon. But there's far more in there with a tenth of the weight that everyone should be eating.
Yeah. Mercado La Paloma, LA's #1 restaurant on the 101 list. I endorse that. That is a perfect #1 pick.
Yay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's a wrap on 2025. Thank you for listening and being a part of this journey. We really appreciate it. If you have any thoughts on how we can make our show even better in 2026, send us a DM at @StreetGourmetLA or It's Acquired Taste on Instagram. Happy holidays and a happy new year. Salud.